Good afternoon, everyone. I'm your host today, Christine Arches, or you can call me Archie, and I'm here with
ARIEN AGCANAS,
Ancheta or Chan,
Gabriela or Gabi,
Miguel or Migs.
and today we'll be talking about the current state of intellectual property. Okay, so is there anyone who wants to start? How about si AGCANAS?
So here in the Philippines, intellectual property is not really followed by a lot of people. So an example is counterfeiting, which is creating an exact copy of a product at a low cost and then selling it. Some people are getting scammed by counterfeit goods due to how similar it looks with the original product and due to how online selling works. Sometimes you can tell if a product is fake or it's not after you paid for it online and has been delivered to you. From the given data by the Intellectual Property Office of the Philippines, most counterfeit goods are being sold online with Facebook as the top platform. Some of these platforms also include online shops like Lazada, Shopee, and Carousel, but counterfeit goods are also being sold in physical stores like Green Hills Shopping Center, a major shopping complex in San Juan, Manila.
Yes. Especially being new to online shopping, you just can't help but get potentially scammed by these fake products.
It's true. Like, you can see this a lot for K-pop merchandise right now because it's super relevant.
Yeah, actually, nakaka-relate din ako kasi I'm into those merchandise. Especially, for example, pag very new ka lang sa mga things na gusto mong bilhin or yun nga yung mga products. Pag hindi mo talaga alam or hindi mo inaral yung product mismo kung legit siya or hindi, marami talagang parang nagiging victim ng mga counterfeit products. So, I really agree with the statement by our panelists. Pero people tend to disregard or lack information with regards to intellectual property theft or in this case counterfeiting. Kasi parang in the norm sa ating society as a culture, we tend to disregard this or hindi talaga natin siya binibigyan ng importance na mali pala yung ginagawa natin. So another topic is movie piracy, which is from traditional mediums. For example, actually, when medyo bata pa ako, matagal na yung mga DVD piracy yung nagbebenta sa bangketa for a lower price. Pero it's just another example of an intellectual property crime or a problem in our country. So an article named Piracy Tops Intellectual Property Violations in March to June was published by Chris Mundo on July 17, 2021. So, the Intellectual Property Office of the Philippines director said that piracy activities accounted for the most intellectual property rights violation reports from March to June. In a speech delivered during a webinar organized by the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry that week, she said that intellectual property rights and their office recorded 67 reports and complaints on intellectual property rights violations from March to June, the first few months of community quarantine period in the country. So yun nga, pandemic. She said that 42% of the 28 total records reported records over the period of that time was piracy activities, including illegal streaming, legal reproduction of copyright content. So makikita natin dito from traditional, it's still continuing and it's still basically a problem in our society. Kasi this is an entertainment medium, hindi talaga siya parang typical need ng tao. So parang would you pay, for example, pag low income family ka lang, to pay to watch the movies or in the cinemas na where it's actually being shown. Pero for example, ito nga yung mga counterfeit DVD piracy products na pwede mo bilhin in a much lower cost. I think that would be the driving point kung bakit lumalaganap to sa ating country ngayon. So technically more on sa financial capabilities ng mga customers kung ba't nila bumibili ng mga pirated DVDs. So any of you have thoughts on the matter?
I do. I think ito din kasi parang especially now na let's say tawag to pandemic. So, hindi tayo makalabas to watch the movies. Tapos nung binuksan na nga yung sinehan, parang sobrang pili lang, nahirap makakuha ng ticket. I think naging prevalent na, search na lang natin. For sure, may magpo-post ng illegal copy naman, ganun-ganun. May iba pa bang sabi?
Meron din ako since alam mo naman dito sa Philippines pag yung mga magulang natin, mahal yung sine, gano'n tayo, pirata lang tayo, ganun minsan parang naging, yun nga sabi ni Christian, norm na talaga yung piracy.
Yung
piracy.
Yung mga practical Asian moms. Masyadong mahal yan. Bili na lang tayo ng DVD sa kanto.
Libre lang yan sa internet.
Totoo. Kung wala nang mag-input, what about Miguel? Ikaw, may gusto ba sabihin about it?
Yes, I have something to say about this. Just as Ancheta has stated about the issue of piracy, I agree that it has gone out of hand, which Odex Philippines, they're the ones who distributed different anime movie films from Japan into the Philippines on the cinemas. They were not exactly pleased when a certain gaming streamer illegally posted a clip of the film back in 2019. I think it was One Piece. Well, of course, Odex asked the Filipinos for help into reporting this sort of illegal activities, but it will damage the relationship between the Philippines and Japanese creators, which was once already in the process of healing. And again, back in 2017, there was another case where an 8-minute clip of a certain anime film, which is, I think it was SAO, Ordinal Scale, there it was also leaked. So the more this goes on, it's the fans it's the fans in the Philippines that watch anime will have to suffer this. So that's all I have to say.
I see. Well, okay. Gab, I think Gab has more info about this.
Yeah, so continuing what Christian said, during the online meeting of the House Committee on the Creative Industry and Performing Arts, Intellectual Property Office of the Philippine Director, Ann Edilon, also said that their office received a total of 190 reports and complaints concerning intellectual property rights for the whole year of 2020. So the report came from public sector, consumers, anonymous reports, and concerned citizens. And then the complaints are those which come from the rights owners themselves. So these reports and complaints related to intellectual property rights soared in 2020, even surpassing the total cases recorded from 2013 to 2019. So there is quite a jump regarding the reports received. And according to Edilon, they attribute this increase partially on the fact that because of COVID, everything has gone online, so it's difficult to check the legitimacy of the reports. So a specific issue I want to point out, just like Christian, is the gathered reports and complaints on pirated shows and movies. So for foreign shows and movies, these are mostly reports of piracy regarding Korean novellas or K-dramas. So IPOPHL reported this to the Korean Copyright Commission as well as the Korean Embassy. On the other hand, of the local shows and movies from Metro Manila Film Festival, like Fangirl and Four Sisters Before the Wedding, are reported. So since everything that people watch is now mostly online, people now have two options: legal and illegal streaming sites. So some legal online sites to watch K-dramas and other TV shows and movies are Netflix, iFlix, Viki, WeTV, and iQIYI. So these sites are legal since they pay to get the license, but you also have to pay for their subscription. On the other hand, a very popular illegal streaming site to watch different shows is Kiss Asian, Although all the shows are free to watch, the site has many ads all around and the video page, and it's just plain piracy site. So, any more thoughts about legal and illegal streaming sites?
Ako siguro add ko lang din, maliban dun sa mga movies nga na pag-usapan natin, and then yung mga series, mga for example anime or K-drama, actually prevalent rin to sa actually mga premium live event or mga concerts nga, na in terms of payment mas mahal talaga siya, since kasi nga concert is a event compared dun sa mga series na actually halos mali naman lahat sila, pero in terms of sa concerts kasi mas prevalent to kasi parang yun nga yung parang payment, or in order to watch these concerts sobrang mahal niya, and then prevalent din yung mga nag-share ng mga illegal na mga viewing sites. So yun lang yung gusto ko i-add.
Oh, I want to continue on your point kasi na-experience ko din yun actually. Just recently, there was a concert that I really wanted to go, but I was busy and I didn't really have money to buy yung online ticket niya. But then I was just active on Twitter. Nakikita ko, people were posting links on yung mga nagsistream para lang makakita din sila. Like, I guess, not everyone can afford it. Maganda yung idea on it, pero you can't hide the fact na mali pa rin yung ginagawa mo. Ganun.
Yeah,
Yes.
meron din sa kung sa group of friend nyo, meron kayong gustong panoorin na concert, yung isa lang yung magbabayad, and yung isang yun, pwede nang i-stream sa Discord, and you can all watch it dun sa Discord app. So, yeah.
Yes, I can agree, and I could also be a bit guilty on those parts back then. And yes, it's not only just streaming sites, but just as Gab said, you can stream through Discord as well. And there are also other softwares that you can now stream Netflix shows. As you know, in Discord you can't normally stream Netflix shows. There are softwares that can bypass the invisibility or transparency that Netflix has. So that too is pretty harmful.
Will there be any input from ARIEN or?
Ganun lang din naman na since nasabi naman na rin yung mga points na gusto sabihin, like yung sa Discord nga.
I see. Okay, so based on what you've all mentioned, or like what you've all mentioned, I think we can see that there is either a lack of awareness among Filipinos about just how big the impact of their actions are and how it can affect relationships, just like what Miguel mentioned earlier regarding yung sa anime shows, yung mga Japanese creators nagagalit na daw, mga ganun. Kasi like we can see na rin that there is an issue when it comes to enforcing the rules regarding these intellectual properties. And it's pretty inconsistent and irregular to the point na there is a surge of counterfeit and pirated items, and not just like media, like yung movies, movies, concerts, and so on. Meron na rin as in physical items na rin. Like, you guys can see that too, di ba?
Yeah, oo. Parang in your point na the lack of knowledge of individuals, or at least yung pagde-disseminate na mali itong ginagawa natin, hindi siya masyado na nabibigay sa public, which is kaya nga rin nagkakaroon ng stigma na itong ginagawa natin is okay lang. So parang ganun.
And to continue to that, like I've encountered a recent article dated around July 2021 from yung International Trade Administration. And they mentioned that the intellectual property laws of the Philippines, they're actually pretty okay. They were made well in the sense na it does favor yung intellectual property owners and so on. Yung problem lang talaga is yung lack of consistent enforcement. Na wala talaga nagbabantay, wala may nagbabantay, but it's not enough. Parang there is a need for us to update the way we plan to protect our intellectual properties. Yun na lang. There is no international copyright because intellectual property laws are different depending on each country. So, bale, yung the protection against unauthorized use depends yung sa national laws of that specific country. Kaya most likely why nakakadulas lang sa Philippines yung pirated movies, gano'n na may makikita mo pa rin like the physical stores and yung mga sites pa, hindi naman nadadown masyado, gano'n. Kasi wala din naman talaga nag-enforce ng laws na yun. Masyado. Like, it's not heavily enforced sa atin. Yun din.
Yes,
Kasi
that
nga,
is
wala naman
certainly
yun.
true. As the internet can be a very tricky platform to be in this to be in us for this pirated films can always be distributed in many, many different websites. And it's very tricky and hard to take them all down as well because it takes out a lot of resources and effort. And all the users, of course, all of them are just able to download it. And if it gets taken down, they can just re-upload it again.
Yeah, that's right. Parang wala nag-ano to. If may nakita illegal, it's not like we report it. May habit pa ng iba na, uy, sinashare pa sa iba. Uy, may nakita akong ganito, alam kong fan ka na. Ganyan, mga ganun. So, it makes the whole situation harder for everyone. Is there anyone who wants to say something more about this? Or okay, mukhang wala naman. So, like, if given a chance, would you change anything in the intellectual property rights system? Let's start with AGNO.
Oh, okay. For me, I think most of the systems are okay, like patent or trade secrets, but except for some of them, like the ones we mentioned a while ago, and most of these types of illegal activities stated, they are just unavoidable to stop right now. Although what change is needed is that for us as a user to put in more effort to be able to, report this type of activities, even though it's not enough to stop them, at least we're trying to help the cause, as this doesn't just harm the owner or the author or even the publisher, but it does hurt a lot of the consumers as well if they decide to stop distributing this into the country like Philippines.
Ako naman personally, I think the actual system and yung pagka-create niya na merong governing body, merong mga penalties, I think it's already there. Ang pinaka-problem lang or I would want to change is the actual implementation. Kasi this body has been established or created actually, I think in the 70s pa eh. So during that time nga, yung more on mga piracies natin, yung traditional methods, katulad nga ng sinabi ko earlier, which is yung mga DVDs, mga physical talagang pinapirate or mga ini-infringe na mga products. So I think ang magandang baguhin dito is the way or the method how people look into this kind of things. Yung mismong governing body or yung mga people in charge, for example sa IPO-PH since more on technological mediums na yung pagpapirate, I think meron din silang parang a more updated or modern approach in how to parang huhulihin yung mga nag-a-abuse or gumagawa nitong mga illegal crimes. Kasi for example, yun nga sa YouTube, di ba, meron silang parang copyright policy, blah, blah, blah. It's the implementation of that in terms of our own country siguro or yung mga platforms natin, maganda siya, pero yun nga, it's still a work in progress. Meron pa ring mga problems like hindi ba't ako na copyright, ganun, I don't deserve this, pero yun nga, kailangan pa natin pag-aralan kung ano yung pinaka best way how to establish or to fit the current implications or yung mga penalties para sa mga gumagawa ng crimes. Yun lang.
So for me naman, I would not really change it, but help find improvements on how to make it fairer for the victims of piracy and such. Yeah, that's it.
For me naman, I just want to reiterate lang yung what I mentioned earlier. I think what's about how there's a lack of enforcement nandun. I think there should be a better plan of action and how they can enforce yung etong mali, how they can track down yung mga pirated stuff and so on. Para onti na lang din yung onting parang creators or inventors yung masasaktan regarding it and mabawasan na yung pag-share lang talaga.
So, sa akin naman is, parang sinabi nyo is, kailangan ma-improve yung system and mas strict yung implementation of rules and policies. Yun lang.
Okay, I think that's all the time we have for now. Again, I am Christine Ortiz or Archie. And
I am
these are my
ARIEN
info.
AGCANAS.
I'm Batman. I'm Christian.
So I'm Andes.
And we are Group 1s about the current state of intellectual property.
Yeah, yung podcast will continue for part 2 for other group members to explain or discuss about different tasks discussed in our presentation. I think that's about it, guys, for our mini group. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, punta naman tayo sa second part ng podcast, no? So, this will be about the freedom of expression, censorship, and cancel culture. So, before we start, guys, maybe magpakilala muna tayo. So, they will know us. Maybe alphabetical na lang para madali.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is AIDAN PAOLO, EBS BELMONTE.
Okay. And I'm Adrian Paul Bonifacio.
My name is John Robert BRIZ.
My name is Kyle Andrei Carlos.
And I'm Charmaine Marie R. CAGUIOA.
Okay, good. So, now that we have nagpakilala na tayo, so as I said earlier, ang topic natin is about freedom of expression, censorship, and cancel culture. First, let's topic muna what is freedom of expression. So, just a brief overview. So, it is the right that grants men to hold opinions and beliefs and the free expression of them, along with receiving information from others without interference or restrictions. So, it is one of the 30 rights in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights by the United Nations, and one that is very fundamental in that other rights are dependent on it. Now, contrary to it, we have censorship and cancel culture. Censorship is when a person or a group tries to prevent others from expressing themselves, and that limits their freedom of expression, while cancel culture naman is about boycotting or snubbing someone from their expression. So normally, the material that is being censored or the person that is being canceled is because the people who censor or cancel them deem that their statement or expression are offensive or harmful in nature. So we see these two things, in a way that they are trying to limit our freedom of expression. So we'd like to tackle a question related to it in a personal manner. For us, individually, what in freedom of expression is being limited when these two things are in play? Or to rephrase it, what is the importance of freedom of expression in our lives? So that is the question. So maybe I can start first kung ano yun, just to kick things off. So for me, the importance of freedom of expression maybe is in widening my worldview now. So I'm really not the person who puts out my thoughts, or to phrase it better, I try not to have opinion on things and just take things as they are. But then recently, I began to realize now a certain thing maybe people may have dividing opinions on it. And so it has become an interesting thing to see for me where people are coming from with their expressions on a certain matter. And so like freedom of expression for me opens up different dimensions that we humans are involved in instead of what we just literally see in our physical world. So as I said, it widens my worldview and it makes me understand people more and helps me connect with them and understand things from their perspective and give reason as to why things are the way they are. And also in that effect, when we think about it then, what we express right now helps mold the future that we would have. So I think that's another importance of freedom of expression sa akin. Through freedom of expression, we somehow get to see the possible futures that we might have based on the topics and the takes of things nila. And from there, we can see and we can prepare for the future that will be ahead of us. And without freedom of expression siguro, I think these things won't be able to happen. I think for me, that is the importance of freedom of expression, widening my worldview, tsaka helping to mold the future and predicting or preparing for it. So that is it for me. How about the others?
For me, usually when it comes to freedom of expression, mostly ito yung nag-express tayo in terms of belief and what you truly stand for when it comes to your ideas or discussions. Every person has a right to speak out their voice on a particular subject, no matter the situation, as long as it is according to a morally approach or tamang approach, walang violence and harmful actions, which is why freedom of expression allows these people to have a right to speak out their voice on a certain matter, to provide information on their opinions and their stand. For me, the importance of freedom of expression is about having a fundamental human right. Ito yung the ability to speak freely. Ito yung what makes a society, not just a black and white discussion of opinions, but a numerous and maraming ideas and beliefs on a particular matter. Since pag marami kang information being dissected by different people, it shows that certain views and opinions can be diverse. With situations like censorship and cancel culture, ito ay nakaka-affect ng freedom ng mga tao, freedom of expression. There are, of course, syempre, mga limitations when it comes to freedom of expression, especially the use of hate speech or violent movements, since this is against the rights or mga batas ng mga freedom of expression. The problem naman kasi for censorship is that ay pwede ito i-abuse, especially in public authority, which is silencing people through different means. And cancel culture naman, in the other hand, is a matter of action that is against freedom of expression. Ito ay movement ay napaka-harmful and chaotic, which is complete opposite what is freedom of expression means. It's all about silencing people who choose to express back. That is why freedom of expression ay important, because it allows people to know what they are thinking and such. That's my opinion. For what about the others?
So yeah, for me, freedom of expression really helped me develop as a person. You know, when I was a kid, I was really shy and I usually just agreed with what other people were saying. And even though I have something to say, I just tell myself that it would be better if I just kept quiet. However, I thought to myself that I had to start speaking up if I want things to go my way or my own way. So, though I'm sure the people who don't use their freedom of expression will find this really scary and will see it as a heavy burden. But in my opinion, people cannot stay in that phase where they're too afraid of using their freedom of expression, because people will eventually need to voice out their opinions, ideas, feelings, and other things in order to survive in this world. Because if you spend the rest of your life afraid to hurt or afraid to hurt other people's feelings and egos, people will see this as a weakness, and eventually you will realize that you're not living your own life. You're just living to please other people. So, anyone else?
So, here's what I think. I really do think freedom of expression has been very instrumental to me, and that many of us, all of us even, take that for granted. Uh, Everyone has something to talk about, to complain about. This ability to share our opinions and beliefs is very powerful. This allows us to protect what we believe in and assert them against detractors for the greater good. Having our voice is very important and is what allows us to get to our goals. I think if it weren't for this right, for this capability to express without worry of people shutting me down, there is basically no chance I could have gotten where I am now. Anything I would say that others may find unfavorable, regardless of how right or wrong, or regardless of how well supported it is by evidence, will be ignored for convenience. Everything that I would say will be for nothing, and I will not be able to go anywhere at all, just because others wouldn't allow me to be myself or to share myself. No matter how much or we take it for granted, we really need to acknowledge and appreciate the opportunities and strengths that our basic right to free expression has given us. Or at least, that's what I think. How about the others?
Hello, for me, I use my freedom of expression almost every day in my life, and at every aspect of it as well. It encourages my self-determination to make decisions for myself. My freedom of expression also encourages me to speak up for what I think is right and just as well, especially at this time because our national elections are coming up as well. I am vocal with my political stance so that my stand and where I'm coming from will reach the ears of many and hope to see why I chose certain candidates. Along with this, freedom of expression also helps me realize what my responsibilities are as an individual, as a citizen, and as well as a netizen in a growing online community. It makes me realize that while I am free to criticize and voice out my opinion, I too have to be careful with the way I structure my message, or else people might misunderstand my statement or actions. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, that's good, no? It's a real good discussion about freedom of expression and its importance to our lives. And really, all points are good. And it's interesting to see na, even though it's the same subject, we really have different takes and perspectives about it. Hey, it's display of freedom of expression. These things really won't happen pag wala tayong freedom of expression. So that's the importance. And I think that's it for our portion. So up next, the topic ng podcast na to is cybercrime cases throughout the years.
Good day, everyone. Welcome to G1 Podcast, where we discuss various social and professional issues. I'm Ms. Santos, host for the third part of the G1 Podcast. Today, we'll be talking about cybercrime cases throughout the years, and we're excited to have Mr. CASIN, Ms. Castillo, Mr. De La Cruz, Mr. De Guzman, and Mr. Coladilla on the podcast. Each guest will be sharing their views, opinions, and answers on the question, as a student and a Filipino citizen, what can you contribute or do to help combat cybercrime in the country? To kick things off, let's all welcome Mr. CASIN.
Hi everyone, especially to the listeners of this podcast. So please allow me to thank you all because it's a great pleasure to be here and be part of this podcast.
So I'll be going over the question again. As a student and a Filipino citizen, what do you think can you contribute or do to help combat cybercrime in the country?
The topic for today is something significant wherein it is about criminal activity that we've been experiencing throughout the years. So, as a student of information technology, I can contribute and help combat cybercrime by raising awareness to people, especially to the younger ones that uses technology nowadays. So for those who doesn't know about what is cybercrime is or how does it work, so let us define what is cybercrime is. So basically, cybercrimes are crimes carried out using the internet, and these are rampant nowadays. So for an example of a cybercrime, so we have here phishing attacks, ransomware, malware, identity theft, and other online scams. So what do I mean by raising awareness? So what I mean by raising awareness is by educating people or even the employees of a company about cyber threats that they may encounter on the internet and how they will be able to protect themselves against cybercrime. So let me discuss again. Cyber threats are malicious act that seeks to damage or steal data or even disrupt digital life in general. So as I have said earlier, ransomware, malware, and etc. So those are the cyber threats. So people must be aware of this attack because attackers might steal all the vital information or data that you have, and it might be used to threaten you or demand a ransom. So to protect yourself against cybercrime, first, make sure that your security is current and updated regularly. So second, always remember to lock or log off your computer when you step away. Third, go offline when you don't need an internet connection. The fourth one, make sure to take advantage of your security settings in your devices. And lastly, always think twice about using public Wi-Fi. So that's all. Thank you.
A very insightful view from Mr. CASIN. Moving on to our next guest, let's say hi to Ms. Castillo.
Hello again, everyone.
So we've heard from Mr. CASIN that people must be aware of the different cyber threats existing at present. Do you agree with this?
I completely agree with what Mr. CASIN said. It really is important to educate people about cyber crimes and cyber threats. Being educated, we have more chances to avoid cyber threats or prevent cyber criminals who are able to use your identity for their own malicious purposes. Regarding the question of Ms. Santos earlier, here is my response. As a student and a Filipino citizen, I can help combat cybercrime by promoting the importance of antivirus and firewall software. Antivirus software primarily serves as a preventive measure. It detects potential viruses and then works to eliminate them. Keep in mind that all of this is done before the virus causes any harm to the system. As a result, the vast majority of viruses are neutralized long before they cause any harm to your system. Aside from that, antivirus software monitors all files that enter your system. All of those files are scanned to look for maliciousness. Viruses can be easily transmitted to your network via infected files, which can then potentially harm your data and files. Such viruses may even result in the complete loss of your valuable data. While antivirus software protects the file system for malicious programs, a firewall prevents attackers or external threats from gaining access to your system in the first place. The firewall monitors all network traffic and can detect and block malicious traffic. Because most computers nowadays are connected to the internet, attackers have many opportunities to locate victim computers. These attackers use the internet to probe other computers to see if they are vulnerable to various types of attacks. When they locate a suitable computer, they can compromise it and install themselves on it. At that point, the attacker has almost complete control over the victim computer. Attackers frequently attempt to steal personal information in order to commit financial fraud. All of this occurs in the background, with the user unaware of what is going on. In conclusion, the most important way to protect their personal information from being compromised by cybercrime is to protect your computer with a firewall and antivirus.
I completely agree with Ms. Castillo's point that we have more chances to avoid cyber threats if we take it upon ourselves to be educated. Now, let's see if Mr. De La Cruz shares the same sentiment. Hi there.
Hello everyone. In my view, cybercrime is like a plague, but this plague is a digital form. It is ever-changing and evolving, but just like a plague, people can take measures and prevention methods. But just like also a plague, you're everywhere and everyone is vulnerable if you are not careful. Always be vigilant, and also people in web can be anonymous if they want to. But how do you protect yourself? Well, be informed, but while you are informed, you need to install softwares such as antivirus or even third-party firewalls. Also, tweak your privacy options at the highest security as possible, and always use a secured notes with a code if possible. The notes can contain your privacy information and bank credentials, even a password manager too if you want. But always control your surfing experience and be secured. That's why I do completely agree with Castillo's sentiment. Furthermore, how do we contribute to prevent these malicious acts? If we have some spare cash, we can at least donate to private or public organizations. One example of one organization is Cybercrime Support Network, or CSN in short. Or if you want to donate within the country, the government-owned PNP Anti-Cybercrime Group is allowing donations too. For cooperation, we can suggest ideas that are beneficial for the public or any information regarding black hat groups. And that is all for me, thanks.
An interesting take from Mr. De La Cruz. Now let us all welcome Mr. De Guzman into the discussion.
Hello everyone.
To reiterate the question, as a student and a Filipino citizen, what do you think can you contribute or do to help combat cybercrime in the country?
Many children and adults want to try to enter the internet world. I have a few advice or tips to help them not fall victim to cybercrime. First, talk to the children about the internet. I will tell them about the acceptable use of the internet without shutting down communication channels. I make sure they know that they can come to their parents or older siblings if they experience any online harassment, stalking, or bullying. For adults who wants to keep up with the internet world, I will tell them to use strong passwords, not repeat passwords on different sites, and change password regularly. Make them complex. That means using a combination of at least 10 letters, numbers, and symbols. A password management application can help to keep passwords locked down. Second, manage social media settings. Keep personal and private information locked down. Social engineering cybercriminals can often get personal details with just a few data points. So the less they share publicly, the better. For instance, if they post their pet's name or reveal their mother's maiden name, they might expose the answers to 2 common security questions. Lastly, keep an eye on the kids. Just like they want to talk to their kids about the internet, they also want to protect them against identity theft. Identity thieves often target children because their social security number and credit histories frequently represent a clean slate. They can help guard against identity theft by being careful when sharing their child's personal information.
The advice and tips laid out by Mr. De Guzman would certainly help in preventing victims of cybercrime. Now, let's all hear if Mr. Coladilla stands on a different perspective with regards to the topic at hand. Mr. Coladilla?
Hey everybody! First, I would like to thank all of the listeners, especially to the student like me. It is really a pleasure to speak up in a podcast like this. So for the question, As a Filipino citizen and a student, I know that we are now more focused and engaged in online world because of the pandemic that we are experiencing right now. We need Wi-Fi or the internet to pass all of our requirements and to communicate to our classmates or to our loved ones. As a student of information technology at Mapua University, I have a lot of data from my school to study and to be kept and protected. And that's why I'm here, to encourage everyone, especially to the student like me, to encrypt and back up all the most important files or data to prevent yourself in any kinds of online crime activity or cybercrime. If you can encrypt the data that's stored on your smartphone and computer, if a hacker copies your files, all he'll get is gibberish, rather than, for instance, your address, book, and financial records. These backups should ideally be duplicated as well, with one stored locally on an external hard drive only periodically connected to your primary computer, and one remote such as in a cloud storage system. Lastly, the one thing that I want also to share and encourage to most of us, especially to those persons who are in needs of internet connection, is to be careful in using public Wi-Fis or free Wi-Fis. Because when using public Wi-Fi, anyone nearby you who is connected to the same network can listen in on what your computer is sending and receiving across the internet. You can use free browsers like Tor, which was originally developed to provide secure communications and to encrypt your traffic and camouflage what you're doing online. You can also use a virtual private network to encrypt all your internet traffic. In addition to what goes through your browser, like me, I use Spotify to listen some good music or watching movies and series in the Netflix app to make it more difficult for hackers or even casual users to spy on you. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you for that informative response, Mr. Coladilla. Now, as our guests for this podcast was able to provide a little context into their own views with regard to the question about cybercrime, I think that it is best to highlight the following points that they have made. First is that it is important to raise awareness about cybercrimes. Second, it is important as well to promote the significance of antivirus and firewall software. Third, donation and cooperation with anti-cybercrime organizations could be of great help. Fourth, advise the person that is planning to enter the internet world about the different advantages and disadvantages, as well as the threats present within the cyberspace. Fifth, encouraging everyone to encrypt and back up all of the most important data they have and to be careful in using public Wi-Fi is an important step that all must practice. With that said, learning about the different ways in which one could help and contribute to the prevention of cybercrime is vital to ensure the safety of ourselves, about different information, about a lot of money, and the reputation of different families, especially because this allows us to uphold the protection of every individual, business, and government that can fall victim to these crimes. And that ends our podcast for today. Thank you so much to our audience for listening, and a big thanks for our guests today.